Hello. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can all hear me all right. My name is Wolf Burchard. I'm a curator at the Metropolitan Museum and curator of the inspiring Walt Disney exhibition, which is now here at the Huntington. It's a... why, thank you. It's a great pleasure to see you all here tonight, although I will admit I can hardly see you at all because you're completely in the dark. But it's a great pleasure to be here tonight, and I will give a couple of introductory remarks and then ask my friends to join me here on the podium. And I will try and keep it brief, which is one of the great challenges in my life. It really is amazing to be here tonight, and particularly as we are slowly bidding farewell to this exhibition, which has been my daily bread for several years. I'm really thrilled that tonight I'm joined by three really important Disney artists. Glen Keane, who is one of the great Disney animators who has, sorry, I'm just looking at the wrong page here. Glen Keane, who was one of the great Disney animators who worked for the Disney company from the 1970s onwards and has brought to life many of the lead Disney characters with which we grew up, The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Tarzan, and of course The Beast, and we'll be talking to him about that. Don Hahn, who was the producer of Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and more recently two very important Disney history-related documentaries, Waking Sleeping Beauty and Howard, about Howard Ashman. And then, of course, Brian McEntee, who also worked for the Disney Studios for many years and was the art director for Beauty and the Beast and was really key to bringing the inanimate objects to life and the whole castle and the atmosphere. So he was absolutely essential to look and feel of Beauty and the Beast, and we'll be discussing all of these things with him in detail. Now, one of the main aims of this show, in a nutshell, was to open people's eyes to the incredible draftsmanship that lies behind the making of Disney hand-drawn animation. And we tried to bring this to bear in this wall of 24 drawings that show the animation of the dress, the transformation of Cinderella. And this is something that you could see in all three versions of the Disney exhibition. This is here at the Met. And for all of those of you who haven't seen the show yet, I can only encourage you to do so, because this is really a really important piece of animation that shows how Disney animators pushed the boundaries of design and technology. The show, rather wonderfully, was in three venues, first at the Metropolitan Museum in New York, then at the Wallace Collection in London, where we were able to unite the drawings that were made in the early stages of the production of Beauty and the Beast that related to Fragonard's The Swing, one of the most important paintings in 18th century art, with the original painting here, The Swing, which was actually especially restored for the occasion. And that was really something rather special. And then, of course, here at the Huntington. And this really is a homecoming. This is the first museum exhibition about Walt Disney since 1940. So that is really amazing. And this exhibition is not only great for Disney geeks, but also for decorative arts geeks. And Melinda McCurdy, who was my counterpart here, whom I can't thank enough because she really made it possible to bring this exhibition here to the Huntington and made it look so incredibly smooth and easy when I know it was quite difficult and complicated. Anyway, she and I were so keen to bring together two of the most important pairs of vases made in France in the 18th century, the so-called Tower vases. The pink ones, which you can see here, belong to the Huntington, and they were really the lead image of the exhibition. And then the green ones belong to the Met. only 2 pairs were ever made, and we reunited them for the first time in 250 years at the Metropolitan Museum. Then they traveled together to London, and they're now here to be seen together at the Huntington, creating this sort of illusion of a castle. So this is basically the pink vases are kind of Disney castle 200 years before the Disneyland castle was built. So this show really brings together these unusual worlds. The one is of decorative arts, objects that were made for small European elite in the 18th century, and the other, Walt Disney hand-drawn animation. And the point of this exhibition is not necessarily to show, okay, this is the historic route that inspired the Disney animation, although that is also part of the show, but it's also about showing how artists were working together collaboratively in the 18th century and in the 20th century. And it's really about a similar kind of creative genius, about an openness to magic, about bringing objects, inanimate objects, to life, and a pursuit of pushing the boundaries of design and technology. And you can see this here in these objects. And what I think is quite interesting is that, in a way, animation and decorative arts are kind of the underdogs of the art world, because they don't fit into any of the traditional categories. I mean, to this day, people still ask the question, is animation an art form, or are teapots or pieces of porcelain an art form, to which I don't think we'll ever have a definitive answer. But Disney is a global phenomenon, and it's really a lens through which people look at historic art. I mean, if you look at the candlestick here, for instance, which is from the Met's collection, and there's the pair of which is in Dallas, people look at it and they say, wow, this looks so Disney, although it obviously has nothing to do with Disney, but it's because these objects share this idea, this sort of wit and humor and fantasy, and they're sort of slightly off and slightly unusual. So this looks so Disney is so often also used for 19th century revival architecture. And I think this is so appropriate, because the last version of the show is here at the Huntington, in a former garage that was loosely modeled on the Grand Trianon at Versailles. And I ask you, does it get more Disney than that? So now I want to start our actual discussion, because you're not here to listen to me, but to 3 great Disney artists. So I am going to ask Don, Glen, and Brian to come and join me here on the stage. All right. I hope your microphones are all working.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
So just to make sure that everybody knows who everybody is, this is Glen Keane, Don Hahn, and Brian McEntee. Great. And it's actually such a pleasure, Don, that you're here in person, because last time we tried this at the Met, you were on a screen and then the sound didn't work and you had to do a whole pantomime thing. So
yeah, it was very embarrassing, but I got a lot of laughs, so that was really good.
And it's great that you're here, Glen, because you were completely snowed in until yesterday. So we're absolutely thrilled that you managed to get here.
Yeah, thanks to my wife for digging us out.
Very good. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Right. So let's start at the beginning. But before we do so. Don, I wanted you to take us back to the 1980s and the beginning of the making of Beauty and the Beast, but we want to take that moment to talk about something related.
Yeah, just to pay tribute to this gentleman, Bernie Mattsson, who sadly passed away last week at the age of 87 and had a wonderful, rich life at Disney. He showed up at the main gate of Disney right out of high school, 17 or 18 years old, with his portfolio under his arm, and the guard said, "You draw pretty well." And so he got a job as a traffic messenger and stayed for 70 years. And he was a mentor to all of us. He directed Mickey's Christmas Carol. He was a great mouse detective, and he storyboarded on Beauty and the Beast. And in fact, the opening bell number he storyboarded, and so many other pieces of that movie. really great guy who understood story and understood, how to sweat the details, and just a really special guy. So we just want to kind of pay tribute to him before we go on and talk. One of the great veterans of Disney animation, Bernie Mattsson. Oh dear.
Thank you very much for that. Now I have here, and I should acknowledge Tom Sito, who actually sent me these pictures as I was working on the exhibition, which all relate to the beginning of the making of Beauty and the Beast. And as I mentioned earlier, Don, you produced a wonderful documentary, Waking Sleeping Beauty, which really takes people back. And I can only encourage everyone who hasn't seen it to go and watch it, because it's a wonderful introduction to the Disney Renaissance. And I wondered if you could take us back once upon a time in the 1980s and tell us how it all began, the making of Sleeping Beauty. Of Beauty and the Beast, sorry. The film is called Waking Sleeping Beauty.
No, you're forgiven. I was working on Who Framed Roger Rabbit in London with Richard Williams, the amazing Canadian English-American director, and the studio wanted to do Beauty and the Beast, and we knew that Walt Disney tried to do Beauty and the Beast, but it was never. It never made it, because the second act of that story is Beast comes down to dinner every night and says, "Will you marry me?" Belle says no, and the Beast says, "Oh, okay," and he goes back upstairs again, and it just stalled out. To which eventually we solved. Not a lot of story, yeah. So Richard didn't want to do it, but his protege, Richard Purdom, brilliant animator, was hired on as director. So in this period picture, center just to the left in the black sweater, left of Glenn, who's in the center, is Richard Purdom, his wife Jill Thomas behind them, and they were the producer-director of the film. To the far left, Andreas Deja, Hans Bacher, the very tall Don Hahn, and then Tom Sito, Gene Gilmore, and Tom Enriquez, who's a brilliant artist. This was in London on Goodge Street at their studio, and this is the humble beginnings of Beauty and the Beast. And it was humble. It was a very small studio, but we got really great work done. Sadly, however, when we showed it to the executives at the Disney, the lights came up afterwards, and it was deafeningly silent. And Jeffrey Katzenberg, who we worked for, said it's time to fish or cut bait, and this isn't working at all. And we ended up throwing away the first 20 minutes of that show, which was heartbreaking. And we had booked a tour of the Loire Valley in France. Right after that, naively thinking our screening would go so well, we'd want to fill ourselves with inspiration. And so I came back, and I think I told Glenn, I said, we have some good news and some bad news. The bad news is our entire film got thrown out along with the work from the last several months. The good news is we're still going to France and going to sample the wine. So...
The bad news was I wasn't on the picture yet. So
no, and I apologize for that. So we did. We took that small and mighty group of really amazing people and good friends to the Loire Valley, the home of France's amazing chateaus, and toured. It was a great experience. That was the beginning.
Glenn, would you like to add to that experience of visiting the Loire Valley, which was your first trip to France, I think?
This was the first time I think I really started thinking of myself as an artist. When I was a kid, my dad said, "Glenn, I'm a cartoonist." He drew a comic called The Family Circus. And he said, "Glenn, I'm a cartoonist, you're an artist." And I was 7 years old. I was like, wow, that is like being knighted. But it wasn't until being in London and keeping a sketchbook and drawing and starting to see, I mean, LA, you're not surrounded with art.
Except
art.
when you come to the Huntington.
Yes, present company accepted.
Except when you come to the Huntington or Norton Simon, but there, everywhere, there was beautiful sculptures, and I was drawing, and I started to really embrace this idea of being an artist. And the assignment to do the Beast was like challenging and scary, and how are we going to do this? And we were up in Primrose Hill, and I'd walk by Regent's Park every day, and I'd see these the London Zoo and wolves walking by, and I would draw them. And so Beast's tail is like a wolf tail, and his legs are like a wolf. And there was a mandrill there named Boris, and I remember drawing him, and an English lady that spoke a lot like Wolf said, "He's got a rainbow bomb, he has." I had to write that down. But so I was so disappointed when everything was thrown out. But Don just has this unflappable way of steering through whatever negative thing comes. He turns it around, and it's the best thing in the world. I mean, it was really, truly, that's exactly how you said, good news and bad news. I was like, and you said, what do you want to hear first? Give us the bad news first. And that's when you told it was all thrown out. But then turning it around was great.
And I think I seem to remember, apart from the fact that you said that it was a great trip, you also had to share rooms, didn't you? I mean,
I had hoped we would not get into that topic
so,
tonight, but it's a different era we live in.
And but just sharing a room, a bed, actually.
We shared a bed, actually, yeah.
And but then you woke up very early in the morning, and then you drove to Chambord, I think. And I seem to recall you just seeing the castle through the mist. It was almost like sort of, reenacting Belle's arrival at the castle.
Yeah, I mean, we got up at 4:35 in the morning.
Yeah.
And driving through the forest there, the hunting, woods of the king, and it was just that deep, deep fog. And I'm thinking, when are we going to see this chateau, Chambord? And finally, it opens up, and you just see a shadow. I mean, just with pointed spires, and I just got chills. I mean, it was this was Beast's castle, and it became an inspiration for actually what became Beast's castle for us.
And then after the trip, you all went back to Los Angeles and then reconvened and then took a different course. And then, Brian, you joined the team.
Yes.
And and the whole atmosphere of the film completely changed. Brian, can you talk about your arrival on the set, as well?
Well, I had been offered the job of becoming art director on the picture when Dick Purdom was still a director on it, though he was at that point a very unhappy director because everything he had wanted to do was kind of thrown out. At the time, Jeffrey Katzenberg had said, well, we want to make this a musical. We'll get Ashman and Menken on it, and it needs to look like a Disney film, because part of the problem was the look of it had gone so far towards, for lack of a better term, an artistic film, and Disney is, famous for entertainment, and so the edict had come down. It needs to look like a Disney film, and we're going to make it a musical. And Don, you might speak to this more as far as Dick Purdom's reaction to that was, well, I'm not really your guy. So I came onto the picture. The director left. It was me and Don. We were the only two people on the picture.
It was fun.
and well, it was fun for me because I looked at it and I thought, well, I can make this look like anything I want to make it look like, and there's nobody but Don to say no. So I just started drawing, and like the Cogsworth drawing on this image here, that's my drawing. At that point, Cogsworth had been a grandfather clock, and it was a very large, lumbering kind of character. And I thought, well, Cogsworth interacts with Mrs. Potts and Lumiere, who didn't have those names at the time. But I kind of wanted to get that trio, that sort of classic trio. So I said, he should be a mantle clock, and he should be very tightly wound and sort of like,
Yeah.
And so we started working off of the functions, like Lumiere's very flamboyant, like literally, and using sort of their functions to speak to their characters.
Lumiere was named Chandal even in the lyrics of the early demos. And Mrs. Potts' first name was Mrs. Chamomile. But we were afraid kids couldn't pronounce that, and most of us couldn't pronounce that, so.
And I think that idea of producing a kind of caricature of the characteristics of the figure is also something that had been inspired by your earlier work on Brave Little Toaster.
Yes.
It's a great film.
Because we did that with the objects. Like, Lampy's a dim bulb, and, Blanky likes to be cuddled, things like that. So that kind of carried over. And then I just started drawing to try to make the movie really what I would like to see. The trick for me was to get the flavor of that era and that design without what we call in the business pencil mileage, which is literally the mileage of how many lines you have to draw on all these characters. So when you're working with the design of this era, it's all about fleur-de-lis and decorative elements, and so there would be just tons and tons of pencil mileage. So finding that balance, like how to make it look ornate without like all of our animators' hands falling off before the end of the picture.
No, because that I think is a great irony, which with the film and bringing 18th century decorative arts to life is that the way that the decorative artists in the 18th century brought their objects to life was by making them particularly ornate. Meissonier, for instance, created these candlesticks, which are so complicated and carry your eye and really bring in movement, but that would have made it impossible for animation. So you really had to streamline and think about every single element that you introduced because of all of the mileage. And then I think one point this is the moment where I pitch the exhibition catalogue, of which there are large stacks outside, I gather, is that I interviewed the three sitters here for the exhibition catalogue. And one point that you and I discussed in a fair amount of detail is that by the time you joined the team, so much money had already been spent on the film that actually you had to work under pretty
economize.
Financial constraints.
Right, and so I was told, keep it simple. Don't no excess shadows or tones on the characters or some of the fancier things that really in the films that dovetail Beauty and the Beast. There are a lot less of them on Beauty and the Beast, even though everyone looks at it as like, well, that's kind of the modern Disney classic. But I was under a lot of restrictions visually. So it was a real trick to try to get the richness on the screen with the limitations of management kind of going, well, we already spent all this money sending these people,
to the Loire Valley.
To the Loire Valley that I didn't get to go on.
So sorry.
Not that I'm bitter,
But it's but I mean, we're looking at the screen now. I mean, you did manage. I mean, one point that we want to make in the exhibition, and which I think is also essential to the historic source of the film, is that the castle is almost like a character of its own, and changes atmosphere over the course of the film as a reflection of the changing mood of the beast, and that you were able to create with the artists with whom you worked a changing atmosphere. In spite of the financial constraints.
Right. Well, and also, one of the things that you pointed out with the porcelains is that they were a factory in the sense that not everyone did every part of it. It wasn't just a single person making them, and that's so important in animation. And we had such a great team. So even despite the limitations and despite the kind of rushing it through because, it had kind of gone this direction and then it was going that direction, the artists that were on it, the team that we got together on it, was just crucial to making it what it is. I mean, there wasn't a single person on there that didn't, you just pour passion into what they were doing. And I think that's the kind of thing that does elevate the work. It's so significantly, no matter what you're doing.
It's a huge team effort.
Yeah.
And then of course, it's a duo you see on screen. It's Belle and the Beast, and Glen, you were made in charge of the Beast. And the challenge with the Beast is that in the original 18th century sources, the Beast is hardly described. In Madame de Villeneuve's original version, it's some sort of monster with a large elephant trunk and fish scales. And then in these 19th century renditions, where you can see again the background, the Beast Castle plays an enormously important role. It's supposed to be a very luxurious castle. The Beast, people don't quite know what to do with the Beast. So you have illustrations here, one water crane, it's a boar, then the other one is a lion. So you had very little to work with when you started designing the Beast. And what you created, I think, is one of the greatest designs in animation. Can you tell us how you went about it? And I know you would like to draw the Beast. Do you want to give us the answer while you're drawing it?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right.
I hope
Is this going to work now?
So I think that's going to pop up soon. So for me, in drawing a character, I have a strange belief that the character exists before you design them. I mean, it's really weird. And I would have said that's crazy, except that is what I experience. And Don, I wanted him to, well, I was just telling him what I needed to design the Beast, and I needed some wild animals around me, and I really wanted a big buffalo head. And there was a taxidermy place not far from the studio, and Don got me a huge buffalo head and a wild boar as well.
And that week when I took the expense report to our accountant, he was a real head scratcher, yeah.
Well, you still have the buffalo head, right? You still have that buffalo head?
I do. It's in my studio at home.
Because I have the boar head.
Oh, you have the boar head?
It's a beautiful moment there.
We'll trade.
We should get the two back together.
Yeah, let's get them together. They'll create a beast. So I was in my office, and I'd been working on this design, so many different designs, thinking, what's he going to look like? And I'd been seeing either designs that look like just somebody stuck an animal head on a human body, or they felt like alien, weird creatures. I felt like this needed to be like a creature God had created on Earth that we'd never seen. And one of the assistant animators came in and said, "So Glen, what's it going to look like?" I said, I don't know, Bruce. I'm thinking," and I pointed to the buffalo head, and I said, "I think," make sure, okay, that's good. "I think it should have the weight and scale of this buffalo head. There's kind of a sadness, I think, to the heaviness of this buffalo head. Maybe it was sad because he was on my wall, but..." And I also had photos of gorillas, and I love this crest of a gorilla. But it had to be very expressive for animation and emotion. So I wanted the brow also like a gorilla brow. But then there was that wild boar, and the way the hair goes backwards on its muzzle. But then, if Belle ever had to hug him, I wanted him to have soft mane, like a lion. But there had to be tusks like that boar, because he's wild. And that beard like a buffalo beard. And then these horns, I had a whole variety of different horns that I'd been studying. There was a combination, twisting, angling horns. And then I'm thinking, Belle's never going to fall in love with this guy. This isn't going to work. How's this going to work? I'll give him cow ears. That'll make him friendlier like that.
That always works, yeah.
But ultimately, inside, there's a prince, and he's trapped inside, and the eyes are the window to the soul, and he's looking out from inside that beast. And you see someone that wants to be freed from inside. And as Bruce was looking over my shoulder, I said, that's him. I mean, I just recognized that's him. That's who he is. And that became the beast. Thank you. So there's one thing. I would not be here today because I would have been trapped up at Lake Arrowhead. We had 7 feet of snow. And the only reason I'm here is a friend came and with his tractor and dug us out, and we were able to get down the mountain to be here. So I am dedicating this to my friend, to Pat, with Beast Wishes. Glen Keane. So, anyway, that's the beast.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
So, I'm trying to... Oh, no, we need now get to switch back to the presentation, if we can manage that.
It's always like a magic trick watching you draw. You know, you can see what the magician does right in front of you, but you still don't know how it was done. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
No, it is amazing. And I really do think the beast, it looks like a creature that could exist in real life. It's just amazing. And transitioning, sort of bringing the beast and the space that you created for the film together, I wanted to talk about the famous ballroom scene, which we highlight in the exhibition. The film was nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards, and this ballroom scene, I think, was really part of why the film was nominated. I mean, quite apart from the fact that obviously Angela Lansbury sang this beautiful song as the teapot for that scene. But I wondered if the three of you could talk about the creation of that scene. In the exhibition, there's a drawing that you made creating that circular or or sort of oval space, which, going all the way back to the first drawings for the film, had a source of inspiration in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. So if the three of you could talk about the creation of the space and then creating this three-dimensional space and then the animation of the figures in the space, because that really is cutting-edge technology.
Well, story-wise, it was our directors, who are great, Kirk Wise, Gary Trousdale, they wanted to have this moment that swept you away story-wise. Computer graphics was new. This was probably 4 years before Toy Story. And so they wanted to create this environment that then Brian had to dig into and figure out how to do. The story point here is it's where Belle and the Beast consummate their relationship. And you, in an animated film, especially a Disney animated film, you can't use something salacious or something that is a more adult version of that. So you have them dance. And this was really based a lot on The King and I, and that shall we dance moment. And when she lifts up her dress and they spin around, it was very much referencing that story-wise. But it still left the problem of creating a space where you could soar around and do something. It was storyboarded by Roger Allers, I want to say, who went on to direct Lion King. Brilliant story, man. And I think Brenda Chapman worked on it as well. And so the movement and the camera sweep in it was really important. But computers were not up to speed on what they are today. You probably have much more computing power in your cell phone than we had when we did this. In fact, we would render these frames on the weekends, and we had a fallback position. We would send them to a large render farm that included machines in feature animation and in Imagineering across the street, and you'd come back on Monday morning and like 2 frames would be rendered. And if it didn't work, we had something called the Icecapade solution.
Well, and what you have to realize is, I mean, this was at the very, very beginning of computer graphic animation. We were doing things that really hadn't been done. And it's hard to think of that now because everything is, all CG. And the hand-drawn stuff, unfortunately, is the rarity now. But back then, it took so long for them to render something visual to actually see that it was very hard to art direct. For me, this was like kind of my nemesis moment. And Don can probably remember this, is I was trying really hard to not use the computer for this sequence and just do it traditionally, because I was worried that the look would not carry and meld with the rest of the film. Now, I was right that it doesn't completely meld with the rest of the film, but I was completely wrong about not wanting to do it, because actually, it was kind of the magical moment in the movie. And I think it really did kind of bust the doors down for CG environments in animation. So as much work as it was really worth it in the end. Story-wise, this moment was about, the first dance. It's like kids that go to the prom, it's their first dance. That whole kind of idea is sort of tucked into all of this. It's that kind of special metaphor for romance. And then what I was doing with the art direction was Belle at the beginning is kind of standoffish and cool, and she doesn't, she's different than the rest of us, the number at the beginning. She's the only one in blue, everyone else is in warm colors, so I made her literally different from the rest of them. And she warms up color-wise as the movie progresses. Now the Beast starts in very warm colors, and he cools down. So you'll notice in the ballroom, she's warmed up, he's cooled down. Now they can meet. Now they can fall in love. So it's bringing together all of the elements, the metaphorical elements, the color elements, to make that moment happen. Are the kinds of things that maybe people don't think about when they're watching it, but you kind of feel it. And so that's the kind of things we were trying to do with the film, throughout the film, the kind of things I was trying to do with the art direction and the color, the progression of color, to really be responsive to the story and the characters.
Did you want to add anything to the ballroom scene?
I think it's well done. I would leave it the way it is.
No, because then
in animation,
it is good. I'm glad you approve. Then the other scene that we highlight in
but I do want to say something about that.
Okay.
That in animation, when you have two characters on the screen, often you have two different animators playing off of each other. And that works pretty well. But when they are actually dancing, you have to it's got to come down to one person doing it. James Baxter was the one who actually animated this, though he and I had to work on how to dance together, so we had a dance instructor.
That was embarrassing to see you two.
Not as embarrassing as you and I sharing a bed there
I do have film clips. More on that later.
But so I would do drawings over James's Beast, because his Beast didn't look like Beast, but then I would draw over it. But James is an incredible animator. He sees everything perfectly in his head before he draws it. I'm not like that. And so I had such respect for what James did here with this. So I just wanted to give a shout out to James Baxter.
Yeah, because it is an amazing piece of animation, and I think what we find so difficult, or what I certainly, as I was trying to put it into words for the book, trying to understand the process of producing this animation, is having you had printouts of the room as it changed, onto which then he could animate, so that he got the camera move right, but still rather difficult, I think, isn't it?
Well, he still had to make them move in perspective perfectly to fit into this room that a computer made. So he was, you know, the human computer, basically, that,
exactly.
created that animation, because the perspective and the change of angle, all while they're doing this beautiful dance. I mean, that's a real gift.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Now, Don, how much time do you think did he need to produce that animation of them dancing through the room?
You know, it's remarkable. A good animator on a great week might be able to do 8 or 10 feet, which translates into 4 or 5 seconds of animation. The good animators are oddly always the fastest, because for some reason they can turn it out. This goes back to even Walt Disney's era. This is a long scene, and James was very fast. And considering the technique, where he did get like a printout of what was kind of a wireframe version of the ballroom and have to move on it, he did it fairly fast, maybe a month, I'm guessing, because it was 30 years ago. But he was pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I'm asking the question is because I know that you were under quite a lot of time pressure when you did another scene, which we highlighted in the show, the transformation of the beast, which was a real challenge, but is absolutely a key moment in the film, but also in the exhibition. In the exhibition, we show your pencil drawings because we really want to bring out all of the energy that you put into this piece of animation.
Thank you for including that animation, by the way.
Thank you for drawing it.
I mean, there's something about the drawing to me is, I just wanted to be a sculptor, and animation to me is sculptural drawing. I'm trying to convince you that this is not a flat drawing, that you could put your hands around that character, because they're that real to me, just like designing the beast. Suddenly, he's real. They're not flat, they're dimensional. And I've been waiting for this moment to animate Beast's transformation. And finally, I had 1 week left. And I was just like panicked, and I don't know, I'm not sure what I was saying, but somehow it got to Don that Glen's panicking in his office there, something.
He's
I don't know
freaking
what,
out.
He's locked himself in. Yeah.
But I remember you coming into my office, and so Glen, I understand you are really worried about getting this animation done. We don't have time, you're right. But look, this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Take whatever time you need, make it something that you will be proud of. It'll be that way for the rest of our lives. I will run cover for you somehow.
Thank you, Don.
Yeah.
That was good. I think we're all thanking you.
Yeah. What a producer. And so what I did was, all right, I'm going to walk out of work here, and I'm going to drive down to the Norton Simon Museum just to remind myself that I'm an artist that's choosing to animate. And I'm going to go in and look at some of Degas sculptures, and I had all kinds of different artists that I wanted to just energize myself with. And so I walked up there. Before you get in, there is Rodin's Burghers of Calais. And it was like, oh, whoa, as I walked around, the thing that really got me was the back of the Burghers of Calais. If you look at, I mean, it's like he's sculpted canyons in the back muscles. And it was just so powerful. And so I started drawing that. And before I knew it, I knew exactly what I had to do was Beast was going to rise up, and it was going to turn around, and you're going to see his back changing. And the whole thing became a sculpture to me, a rotating sculpture that I ended up putting Beethoven's Ninth music to it when I showed Kirk and Gary. And it was one of those moments you just felt like this is why I was born. You know, there's certain moments like that. Thank you, Don.
You're welcome. It's, as a producer, it's the most exciting time on the film. It's not the red carpet or the, whatever. It's when there's artistic breakthroughs, and both these guys have made it. My favorite description of a producer is you hire the best people you possibly can, and then you do exactly what they tell you to do. And so to be able to do that on this show was a treat.
Well, thank you, all three of you, for all of this. We're slightly running out of time, and I think we're supposed to take questions. One point that you made, as you just described, you're showing the animation using, playing Beethoven's Ninths simultaneously is really the importance of music in the film. And Don, I was going to ask you to talk about Howard Ashman's huge role, instrumental role, in the making of this film. Do you think you might be able to summarize that in 30 seconds, because we get into trouble? But I also, I will say you've produced two films in which he plays an important role, both Waking Sleeping Beauty and Howard. But if you could say that, because I think that really is significant.
Yeah, we didn't have Walt Disney. We never knew Walt Disney, but in a way, we had Howard as a component of what Walt gave his artists. And there were really exciting days in the studio that you guys remember, when you would go by a closet, and out of this tiny little office, you'd hear them playing the songs for Little Mermaid for the first time, on a piano. And that was so energizing in the studio. You could feel the energy kind of pouring out of their work. Howard and Alan went on to Aladdin, and when we needed a songwriter, sadly, but to our benefit, Aladdin had horrible story problems. And so they put Aladdin back into story hell, as we call it in Hollywood. And we were fortunate to be able to have Howard and Alan for a while. And Howard, they both were so embraced this story and so understood it, and were so committed to it. Howard's knowledge of musical theater was encyclopedic. He not just wrote the songs, but he knew the references. He would say, this Gaston song, it's based on Miles Gloriosus from Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. No one knows that reference. But if you go look up Miles Gloriosus, he was a Roman soldier and he was Gaston. But Howard could bring that knowledge to the table, and one of the funniest people in the room, inspiring. And then, of course, Alan Menken has that gift of putting melodies in your head that you simply can't get out. At home, we would get the tapes from them would arrive, and it would come in the mail, and it was a tape. Those of you younger people in the audience, a tape is a small cassette about this big. Occasionally, the tape would run out, and you'd have to rewind it with a pencil. And I would listen to it in my car on the way into work, and one of the first tapes we got was Be Our Guest and the Bell Song. And I remember just giving it to you guys, and everybody would listen to it in the studio, and it was like Christmas Day, because you're getting these tremendous gifts from these two songwriters. Sadly, we lost Howard during the making of the movie. The AIDS crisis was at its height. But boy, did he give us a gift, not only in terms of that movie, but in terms of the knowledge he left behind in that studio that I think still today resonates, his knowledge and appreciation and love of American musical theater.
Thank you so much, and thank you. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us today for this conversation. We're now, just before we open this up for conversation, I really want to say that it's been such a pleasure not only talking to the three of you tonight, but also to interview you for the book, for the exhibition. For me, doing this exhibition was a real dream come true, so I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be here with you tonight in person, because when we started out, it was all via Zoom, so this is rather thrilling.
Can I say, too, Wolf, this is the appropriate time to thank you for all the work you put into this. It is an amazing exhibition. And to be sitting here at the Huntington, the most extraordinary place on earth. And to have you bring the show here from the Met and from London is a treat. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you, thank you. It was all thanks to you. So, are there any questions? We sort of slightly ran over time. There's a question there, and I know that there's microphones going around. There's a person here who has a question, or there's...
I can speak really loudly. I'm a big fan of the film, so this was a real treat, but one question that always piqued my interest was the naming of the beast, who was never given a formal name. He was always referred to as the beast. Was there a reason behind this? I heard a rumor that there was just a lack of time. I thought it was something maybe addressed in the live-action version, but would love to know a little bit more of your thoughts on that.
Before you give the answer,
Yes.
because I know that this is being recorded, I was told that when people are asking questions, they should hold a microphone so that it's recorded. But I'm just going to repeat your question. Why does the beast not have a name?
He didn't. And I can't completely tell you why. We never named him because it seemed like to call him Larry or something was not the right thing.
It was that problem. I mean, what name do you give him? You know, that would be the thing.
In subsequent storybooks, he was named Adam, I think, which I personally thought was not good because he would have had some sort of French name, I would think. So in my mind, he's never been named, really.
Can I just add to that in the original source, obviously, Belle doesn't have a name. I mean, she's Beauty. And I don't know who came up with the name Belle, but in the 18th century book, she doesn't have a name.
Daryl Rooney, who was an early story person on the movie, I can call him out because he said, what if we call her kind of Belle? It sounds like Beauty. And so Daryl, thank you, Daryl.
Yeah. I mean, they are, you can't name them a name, you know, like Larry, Frank, or something, because they're
Harry.
symbolic. They are everybody. When animating the Beast, I had a terrible temper when I was a kid. I think everybody knows what it feels like to have that kind of anger and rage, and you have to control it. And Beast is every man. And Belle is every woman. I mean, they are symbols, and it would have been bad to have named them. But after Beast transforms, I remember in the recording session with Paige, where Beast and Belle are dancing, I asked if we could record a line where Belle says to Beast, do you think you could grow a beard? I think it would still be good. We should still add that in there.
I can make a few calls. Yeah, that's good.
Any other questions? No, there's a question there. Let's see, the microphone is coming. Yeah.
I had the pleasure of having Mark Kent talk about this film in Chicago before it came out. And when he told the crowd that Robbie Benson was going to be the voice, there was like this groan. You know, this is the movie one-on-one. I was just curious about the casting, the brilliant casting of Robbie Benson, how that came about.
Years of therapy have... First of all, Robbie is a great actor, and if you think of his early career, he's somewhat of a child-teen star, Ice Castles, that kind of thing. When we cast him, we were asked by the studio to not broadcast that. We had looked at every actor in Hollywood came in and read for that role, but Robbie did not have a reputation that was of a great male dramatic lead.
Well, didn't you even not say who it was when you played it for Jeffrey Katzenberg for the first time?
That is correct, because we were worried people would have a preconceived notion about somebody. And so when you audition someone, you play it blind without telling people who it is, and often by looking at the drawing of the Beast that Glenn had done. And that was the case with Robbie. And Kirk and Gary and I were sitting in the auditions, and we thought, I'll be damned, Robbie Benson. And he was so great, because he could not only deliver the kind of fee-fi-fo-fum big Beast side of it, but he also had this amazing heart and the tears and the kind of pathos that I think then you could give to somebody like Glenn to inspire the performance. Really brilliant guy, and of course now he's a director and educator, but what a stroke of luck for us to be able to inherit somebody like Robbie, who would have been maybe the last person you would have thought of.
Yeah, and this Robbie Benson's blue eyes, Beast's blue eyes, he really has a sensitivity and a bass voice, too, surprising. And I so wanted to meet Robbie. I always meet the actors, and Jeffrey would not allow that because he said, I know you, you're gonna make the Beast look like Robbie Benson. Like, no, I won't, I promise. I do have control over my pencil. But it wasn't until after the film came out, and yeah.
It's like Mrs. Potts. Our friend Dave Pruxma animated Mrs. Potts, and people go, she looks exactly like Angela Lansbury. And you go, no, she's a hopping head. You know? Like, how can she possibly look like Angela Lansbury? But she does.
Are there any other questions? I think we have time for one more question. There's one here in the front. If you could raise your hand again so that the person with the microphone. Oh, well, or we'll have more than one question then. I think they're...
So sorry.
I don't know. I'm sure it's fine if we have more than one.
Thank you. Earlier when you were talking about the ballroom scene, you were talking about how it's the very beginning of the introduction of CGI, computer animation, and now in today's world, CGI is kind of the norm, and like you said, 2D is kind of the rarity, but there has in recent years been kind of an uptick in this beautiful combination of both traditional 2D elements being added into CG films. What are your hopes for, so my point is, like, I think there's a resurgence of the love for 2D animation and traditional analog.
My hope would be that
What are
if
your
it's
hopes?
going to happen, that it happens soon, because a lot of the people, you know, like Glenn, myself, and some of us who are now aging out, you know, if they're going to start doing hand-drawn animation again, this resource will soon vanish. And when I came into the business, actually there had been a lull and a dying down of animation, and the teachers I had at CalArts were all the old guys, and they just kind of poured all their knowledge into us. So my hope is that if hand-drawn animation is going to have a resurgence, that it happens sooner rather than later. Because all of that knowledge will be lost. And we were lucky. I mean, I'm so fortunate that I owe my whole career to those teachers I had who, you know, came from the first wave, the kind of the golden age of animation, and were so willing to pour their knowledge into, you know, young kids like me. And so, you know, that was what gave us this resurgence that I experienced. So if we want a new resurgence, all you young guys, you know, you need to get going.
Yeah, I love to draw. It's like if I was playing a violin, there's a feel of the resonating string, the wood, that you could never give up. You would never want a world without orchestras with live instruments playing it, and hand-drawn animation is the exact same thing. Yeah. I think of when a drawing, to me, the line you make, it's like a seismograph of your soul. You feel it. You feel the emotion. You look at a Degas ballerina, and the charcoal line that he draws with, there's a tenderness. There's something beyond. It's when you do it in CG, the character is real, and you have to believe them. But there's something extra and wonderful about a line. That's the magic. It's the magic of Matisse and Picasso, and we can never lose that. We can never lose that. I mean, that's what I'm doing. Since I left Disney, I don't know, about 10 years ago, I've been drawing, hand-drawn, as much as I possibly can. When Kobe called one day and said, look, I've written this poem, Dear Basketball. Would you do it? Would you do it in hand-drawn? Because he was such a fan of the real thing.
Well, I think there's a much closer connection between the artist and the art when it's hand-drawn. When you're working with CG, you know, you're working through the computer graphics systems, and there is a bit more of a distance you have to cross, and a little less of your personality can get directly into it. So when you draw it, you know, it's coming right out of your hand onto the paper, and that's it. It seems weird, but it's a huge difference. It's just a huge difference.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is the perfect closing remarks for an exhibition that really, as I said at the outset, was about draftsmanship and people actually working with pen and pencil and paper. So thank you again, all three of you, for joining us tonight. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. And I should just say that the exhibition is running, I think, for another 3 weeks. Then it's closing. Then that's it. It's not going anywhere else. We had, I think, 7 or 8 museums that have asked for the show, but this is it. So do come back to see the show. Bring all your friends, all your family, anyone you can pick up on the street, and we'll see you for the sequel in due course. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.